exams or anything. I suppose it's more kind of study you your kind of college year. So what we're going to look at is active reading. So kind of, you know, strategies to read all your articles and books that your recommended readings that your lecturers have given, and also note taking and researching. So they're the kind of three, I suppose it's three topics in one. And if you have any questions, I know Keeva is going to be managing the chat. Do you want to say hello?
Hi everyone, I'm Keeva. So if you have any questions, you can pop them up into the chat. You can raise your hand as well, and just, you know, any questions at all, just fire them to us and we'll help you out if we can.
Yeah, so today we've actually started using Mentimeter. So if you have your phone there handy, and I suppose it's trying to get it more interactive. I know it's difficult when it's a webinar and everything like that, but it's really for you to kind of stay engaged with the topic and not to like lose focus. So if kind of when there's questions kind of asked, it's like votes and stuff, you just use your phone, and you only have to put it in once into your phone, and it kind of keeps up to date with all the new questions. So yeah, that'd be great. So I suppose the first topic we're going to discuss is active reading. So the first question, so if you could go to menti.com, so menti.com, and enter the code 7887334. That would be great. So that's menti.com 7887334, and all these are anonymous anyway, so it's just so the first question is, how many recommended readings have you received? So I suppose it depends on what type of course you're doing. I know English would have an awful lot of recommended readings, and some lecturers love to give a list of recommended readings, so it can be quite a lot sometimes.
Yeah, it can feel like it's hard to keep up with them, but you know, there is ways of tracking how many readings to get done and breaking them down into smaller chunks to make it a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, so that's great. So I suppose we can see there that a lot of people have been getting a lot of recommended reading, and someone has got none. So I suppose it depends on what course you're getting, and throughout the year, if you have kind of whatever assignments and things due, like your readings will increase. So that's great. Thanks for that. So I'll just move on. So I suppose with college, as we've seen in that server, whatever test quiz thing, a lot of you, the majority of you have a lot of reading, and I suppose some lecturers do kind of give an awful lot of reading, and it's really important to note that more than likely you probably won't get every single word and everything. That's not realistic at all. So I suppose having strategies in place to learn how to like manage your reading and try and get the most important things to read, that's going to help you, and it's going to reduce your workload, and you're going to get the work done quicker. So just to note, like, you might have an awful lot of reading, but I suppose lecturers put recommended reading up there, and you have to kind of figure out which is more important, and it's not realistic to read all of it. Would you agree, Keeva?
Sorry, I've muted myself. Yeah, no, definitely I would agree. It's hard to get, when there's a lot of reading, it's hard to get through all of it. So even, you know, picking out the most important one or parts of the article which is more important. So yeah, no, that's definitely, and having those strategies in place makes it a lot easier going forward in your college life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose when you have a lot of readings and everything due, and you're told to kind of read things, I suppose is having clear goals. So what are you actually reading for? Is it for an exam? Is it for an assignment? Is it to understand like something in a lecture or understand the text? And what information am I looking for? So they're kind of the questions to ask before you start reading. I know with English, like if you're given like a book or whatever to read, like you obviously have to read all that. But I suppose if you're after lecture, you're given recommended reading for a specific topic or whatever, it's kind of more easy to pick and choose which ones that you want to read. So just before you start reading, obviously, if you're kind of researching for an article or anything like that, just make sure that you have kind of everything organized. So you have the title of the paper and the book, the author's name, the year of publication, and page numbers that you've taken quotes or anything from. So it's just really important to record where you're getting your information from. And this can be, pen and paper on your notes, or it can be in a Word document, wherever you kind of prefer to take your notes when you're reading. So I suppose there's 4 main kind of strategies to active read, and this is kind of when you have your goals set out. So the first one would be previewing. So you're not really reading every single thing in the paper. Finding the text that is more useful. You're reading the title, the author's name, and the year and headings and graph. So I suppose previewing, the aim of previewing is to see if it's relevant to what you're looking for. And then after you preview, then you can decide, do I need to read it in more detail, or is it not really relevant to what you're looking for? So skimming is another kind of active reading strategy. So you're quickly locating relevant sections. So you're doing the same as previewing, but you're reading the first and last line of the paragraphs and any keywords that are in there too. And I suppose that's kind of another thing to kind of find the relevant information. There might be one paragraph that might be relevant to you, and the rest mightn't be needed at all. So you're just quickly looking to see what you want. And then scanning. So after skimming and finding relevant information, you focus on one paragraph or wherever you find the relevant information, and you slow down during reading the relevant section. So you found the paragraph that you want, you're kind of slowly reading it, you're highlighting words, taking down kind of definitions, what's important. So there might be only a few paragraphs within a paper that you might need. And then there's also critical reading. So I suppose you're in 3rd level now. So if you're in 3rd year, and I suppose the 1st year, the 2nd and 3rd years would be more kind of used to critical reading. But I suppose looking for the pros and cons of the article, looking at the year, is it an old paper or not? Is it recent? And then I suppose looking at the limitations. If it's a research paper, looking at the limitation section, and normally they kind of say, oh, if we need to do this, we should have done this, and also kind of the conclusion and further research. So sometimes they will say in future research, maybe look at this section. So kind of being critical of the paper. It doesn't always need to be negative, it can be the good parts of the paper too. So what was good. So this is another technique for reading, active reading, and it's reading to remember. So it's the SQ3R method. So survey, question, read, recite, and review. And I suppose this is kind of beneficial if you have been given recommended reading, you haven't really been given an assignment or anything like that, but it could come up in the exam. So this would be kind of a useful method if you have that, and yeah, you're not reading all the recommended reading that the lecturer has given. It's kind of she's from the other 4 that we used. So survey, so it's kind of scanning and skimming. So you're looking through the whole reading, you're looking for titles, subheadings, abstracts and the summaries, introduction and conclusion, any pictures, charts or graphs, and then the first and last sentences in the paragraph, and also the conclusion. So you're not reading every single thing, you're starting off by finding out what's the main kind of points and what you really need to focus on. So you're just surveying. So that's step 1. So then step 2, so this is kind of, I suppose, different to what most people would do when they're note taking. When you're note taking, normally people would only write down bullet points of the exact word the paper has said or the book has said. So step 2, you're really questioning, and this will kind of help you remember for long term if you have exams coming up. And I suppose also being critical as well. So when you're reading, just what is this chapter or article about? What did my lecturer say about this chapter or subject? What do I already know about this paper? So you're really just asking a few questions. And then also some questions can come up when you're in the middle of reading it. So is there anything that comes up? Turn subheadings of the paper into questions. So you're being critical and you're really kind of digging deeper into what the paper or the article is saying. So that's kind of a different form of how people normally read. I can move on. So then step 3. So step 3 is read. So I suppose you're focusing on the questions that you asked, and then you're looking for the answers within the text. So you skim the less important sections. You're making notes, underlining and highlighting important concepts. Question the author's reasoning. Is it justified? Is there enough evidence behind their conclusion? And make sure you're understanding of what you are reading. So just making sure that you're actually understanding what you're reading. And sometimes before you read a paper, it's sometimes good to just Google what the definitions mean, so you actually understand what the reading is about. Because sometimes, I suppose, academic journals, they can be kind of very wordy and use complicated words and stuff. So just Google it and see, and then you'll kind of have a good base to go on what you're actually reading. So then this is another kind of technique with the SQ3R. So you close, it's recite, so you close your book, you try to remember each section, what are the main points. You say it aloud and recite it, and then you write a summary of the paragraph or section in your kind of own words. You can do this by creating note cards or a mind map, or just kind of quick 1 or 2 bullet points on what the summary of the article was about. And then review, and I think this is really important, and I suppose this is kind of linked into note taking as well. It's really good to review your notes that you're making every few weeks, because then you won't be kind of left just before the exam kind of cramming everything. So look over your notes and quiz yourself on the information. You can ask yourself the questions that you've written down and see if you know them and see if you can answer them. So revisiting them weekly and testing yourself on new and old material each week is really beneficial in the long term.
It's also a nice way to study. If you have a couple of friends, you can kind of, test each other as well. That's a nice way of, reviewing your work as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose the next question, if you can go on to Mentimeter. So we've kind of discussed previewing, which is kind of just looking over the titles and headings. Skimming is quickly looking over the subheadings. Scanning is a more detailed preview, and critical reading is also very important in questioning whether the pros and cons of the article, and also the SQ3R. So that's really reading to remember. So if you want to vote, so we have 2 for SQ3R, 1 for scanning, and 1 for skimming. Very good. So I suppose you kind of have to choose which one suits you. I know, and I suppose the different goals that you have. It depends what you're reading for. So if you're reading for exams, if you're reading for writing an article, if you're reading for an MCQ, it's different. Does anybody have any questions about active reading? Do you want to manage the chat box, Keeva? And if you have anything to add?
So one thing I was going to add as well, just going back to what you'd mentioned, Aoife, about the new words. If you are coming across words that you haven't, you know you haven't used before. It can be nice to kind of keep track of them, to jot them down, look up the definition. It can help you understand what the reading is about. But it's also, you know, a way to use those words going forward, because if they come up quite frequently in the papers, it's probably one that's used a lot in your subject. Um, and I do it myself. I keep a little diary of new words that I come across, and it's just a little bit easier to remember them going forward.
Mm. Especially if you're kind of starting first year, you're starting a new
Yeah.
subject. It's really beneficial because every kind of subject has their own word bank of things that are
Yeah.
important. So definitely, yeah. So that's great. So we have a few there for skimming and scanning, critical
Yeah.
reading, and SQ3R. And I suppose it depends on the goal of your reading and what you're reading for, whatever you use. We'll probably put up a worksheet on the SQ3R. I use a worksheet with students. Um, on the Student Centre website. So you can download that and kind of help you guide how to do the SQ3R. So the next section is note taking, and I suppose it's kind of linked to what we were actually doing with the active reading. I suppose you're reading actively, but you're also note taking when you're reading as well. So the first question we'll ask is, how do you normally take notes? So kind of what resources do you use to take notes? Is it audio note takers, pen and pencils, um, your laptop? I know there's other forms. There's mind maps and
Yeah.
things that you can use, other apps and things. So if you want to just put down how do you take notes, and I suppose it might be different this year because people are working from home really more so than in a lecture. So we have mind maps and notebooks and pens. I'll just wait for a few more. Pen and papers, yeah,
Yeah.
still a popular one. Then we have the Live Scribe pen, very good.
Fantastic.
Um, we have now I'm getting confused. Flashcards apps. Oh yeah, that's really good. Microsoft Word document. Yeah, so I suppose it's kind of trying to see which one suits you best as well. I know there's a lot of kind of things out there, and there's more apps and everything coming out every day. So, whatever works for you. And I'm not going to tell you what's the best way on how to take your notes, because you obviously have your own kind of way of doing it. But I suppose just to kind of keep things in mind if you are taking notes, whatever way it can be, you know, pen and paper or Microsoft Word, that's fine. That's great. Thanks for that. So I suppose why takes notes? So it promotes active listening. So I suppose this is if you're in a lecture, um, and I know it can be harder when you're listening through a computer. So just making sure that you're engaging with the lecture, and that's why we kind of done Mentimeter this year, because we didn't want you to kind of fall asleep during the during the webinar. So yes, it's just kind of to promote active listening, provides an accurate record of the information, makes you restructure information, so gives meaning, condenses and organizes, and provides repetition as well. So as we know, repetition is always good to kind of keep you remembering good and remembering information. And if you have any questions, just pop them in
Yeah.
to the chat, and Keeva will manage it. Or you can ask away as well. Don't be afraid to turn on your mic. So I suppose this is just kind of the forgetting curve. So it shows how much you forget when you don't organize your notes and review lecture notes. So 60% of the information that happens in a lecture is actually gone 9 hours after the lecture. So just to make sure that you're reviewing your notes and you're taking good notes, because that will impact the forgetting curve. So then I suppose when you take notes and you have good organization and you're reviewing them, it's going to take up to 2 days before the information is kind of gone. So it's not that drastic of a curve. So we're keeping it quite steady, and as the more you review it, the the less likely you'll forget. So just keep that in mind. So good notes are organised, distinguish main points from detail, include some examples because examples can kind of increase understanding, indicate the lecture pattern, allow for self-testing. So just like the SQ3R, you're asking your questions, you can go back to them questions and test yourself. Just like the flashcards as well, the flashcards app are really good for self-testing. Stand the test of time, so they're going to be there for when you need them for your January exams. And then you can also use abbreviations, so you don't need to be writing every single detail down. So
another thing as well is to include maybe color coding. I find that very useful when I was making notes. Different color for different topics, or different highlighter for a different type of studying.
Yeah, that's really good as well, and it helps your visual learning. And whenever you're reviewing it, you can kind of like, oh, that was pink, so you remember it. Yeah. So make sure to include, your date, your module, the topic for all your notes. So when you kind of are organizing them, you will be able to kind of, keep them in order and know what it's for. Yeah, so I suppose when you're at home, you kind of have all your materials, but just make sure before a lecture that you have your notepad, your laptop, pens and highlighter just with you. Okay, so question. We haven't got into the note-taking strategies yet, but when do you review your notes? How often? So we kind of have a few choices here. Never, before an exam, every once in a while, or on a weekly basis. So I suppose on a weekly basis is a routine of reviewing your notes, but okay, so we have one in a while. Once in a while. Before an exam is there too. So it's some people that you're actually reviewing your notes quite well. So I suppose the more you review them, the better you'll get at remembering, and it'll stand to you long term. So that's great. I wonder, does everybody have that in? I might leave it a few more seconds. So I suppose ideally, I know with lectures and other assignments as well, it's very hard, but I suppose in an ideal world, you would try to review them on a weekly basis, and it's not reading everything, but just kind of, questioning yourself about them. But it's still good to kind of, once in a while, and before an exam, I suppose that's a bit of cramming there. So, yeah.
Even when you're looking back over your notes, having like a small notebook in front of you, writing down writing down the keywords or the key buzzwords, and maybe a small definition beside them, which is a way of active learning, really. Yeah.
That's great. So I suppose whenever you're note taking, the 5 R's are really beneficial, no matter what kind of note taking methods you're using. So the 5 R's are record, reduce, recite, reflect, and review. So when you're recording your notes, you're recording any information during the lecture which you believe will be important. Indicate subheadings and supporting detail. Reduce your information. When you reduce your information, you're summarizing and listing keywords and phrases. So you're not writing every single detail of, the lecture slides that will probably be up in Moodle anyway. I suppose you're putting the keywords down that the lecturer has said, and any other detail that the lecturer has said, that will be good for you. That's not in the lecture slides. Recite, so cover your notes you took in class and test yourself on the words in the recall section. So we'll talk about the recall section, but it's just kind of reciting and questioning yourself, and you can use the SQ3R as well for the whole questioning thing. Question yourself on key phrases and words, and any facts or ideas. Reflect, you should reflect on the information you received during the class, so we'll speak about that a bit more too. And review, so review your notes. You'll retain the information a lot more. So I suppose that's what we're trying to do. So trying not for you to be cramming and panicking when it's coming up to an exam, and try and space your kind of note-taking and reading throughout the academic year. So the first note-taking method is the Cornell method, and I suppose this is more so with a pen and paper. I suppose you could do it on a Word document if you create a table. So basically you're splitting your page kind of into 3 sections. So you have a left column here, and then you have like a bigger column here. And then making sure you have your date, your subject, and your topic. So you kind of divide it and make sure you have it well divided with a ruler. So in the left-hand column is a recall column, and that'll help you, recite and review your notes. So in the recall column, you're putting key phrases, questions, and main ideas that you have throughout the lecture. And then across from each of them key phrases, you can put in more detailed notes about them. So you're really separating, the key points from the more detail. And then underneath, after the lecture, you just write your own summary. So I suppose that's kind of questioning yourself and reciting the information yourself. Maybe 2-3 bullet points of what the lecture was about in your own words. So that's good for recall as well. So here's just an example of the Cornell notes, and I suppose you can add colour and things, as Keeva was saying, and highlighting things as well, which would kind of make them more colourful and interesting. But you're putting the main kind of concepts down here. So water affects weight, and then you're just describing it. So you're going along and writing the key kind of facts that are there, and just the more detail in the right-hand column. And then just a summary, this lecture included how water affected weight. So I suppose in more detail would be better there, and just maybe 2 or 3 points on how that is. So another kind of note-taking strategy, we had it there in the Mentimeter, is mind maps. There's different mind mapping software you can get on your laptop, and also I suppose you can just use a pen and paper in different colours and highlighters. And this is really useful for a visual learner if you're kind of, need to see things to understand them. So normally you probably have all seen this and are all familiar with mind maps, but just having the subject in the middle and having different topics, and then for each topic you're putting your notes, your ideas, and your keywords, and then you're kind of building connections by using arrows or using different colours, so you can actually see what's connected to what. So then we have the outlining method, which is kind of the most kind of one people would use if you're using a pen and paper. So you're putting your main topic in, and then you're indenting for a subtopic, and then you're indenting again for a thought or supporting fact. So you kind of can see it visually that the main topic is up here, and then all these kind of sections down at the bottom are kind of related to that main topic. So we have another question. So what type of note-taking would you prefer to use out of the 3 we discussed there? So the Cornell note-taking method, the mind mapping method, or the outlining method? And I suppose we can put some resources as well, Keeva, maybe up on the website for the Cornell note-taking method, just like a template to use. So we have a few for the Cornell taking and 2 for mind mapping. 2 and 2. And 1 for the outlining. Very good. And I suppose if you're kind of new to the Cornell notes, I know a lot of people wouldn't use it, but I suppose it's kind of practicing it as well, and kind of seeing which type of note taking suits you. We're not saying one is better than the other, but just figuring out what type of notes, and especially with online, is it better to write them or is it better to type them?
And you might find that as like a different one for a different module. If you have a maths module and a written module, something different, you can swap them around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maths would be kind of different and computer
Yeah.
science and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, perfect. So we'll just go on to a bit of researching. So we're going to be talking about academic writing 2 weeks time. So we have a break next week. So we'll kind of discuss more about referencing and stuff in that. But I suppose researching is a skill as well, that you really need for college. So we'll just kind of run through a few things, and if you have kind of any suggestions on what you use to research things, just pop it in the chat, or you can turn off your mic there and say it. I suppose everybody has different things, and it's dependent on your subject choice as well,
Yeah.
where you have to look and what type of methods you have to research. So I suppose the first question is why research topics? So it's an important component of your assignments and even your exams. Through reading and thinking about the material and writing it in your own words, you're increasing your understanding. So you're saving time, produces more relevant results, allows you to evaluate information, increases your knowledge base, and gets you better grades. So I suppose in an exam, if you have like a question in an exam and it has been covered in the lecture, um, just you maybe look for a few research articles, try and kind of expand on the knowledge rather than just kind of using your lecture notes. That's kind of what gives you the good grades. So before you research, you're defining your task. So good research begins with good preparation, just the same as before. What are your goals? Figuring out what am I looking for? So you're reading your brief carefully, and we'll go through this in more detail in 2 weeks' time. So just making sure if you have an assignment that you're reading your assignment brief, and you're going back to it to see if it's related to the articles that you're reading. Identify key ideas and concepts. So any kind of key things that you need in the assignment, just make sure that you're getting the relevant information, so you're identifying them as well. And also creating a search plan will help. So sometimes it can be overwhelming when you have like all these, journal articles and you don't know where to start. But continuously going back to your assignment brief can help, and kind of creating a search plan of what you actually need, highlighting your keywords that you need, and include similar words like synonyms or alternative spellings if you're kind of struggling to find good articles. So I suppose this is just an assignment brief. So compare and contrast two communication models and discuss how they are used in advertising practice. So you're identifying two examples to support your findings. So I suppose the main kind of things here you're looking for is two communication models and advertising practice, and you're finding two examples. Just making sure you're underlining and highlighting them important points. So the search plan for this assignment brief would be: 1, you must find two models; 2, assess their validity or usefulness; and 3, identify two examples. So that's kind of your search plan. So that's something you can go off and actually find, and it's less overwhelming. You actually know what you need to kind of do. So locating relevant information. So what sources are available, what are the best sources to use. So I know there's Google Scholar, and also the library have it like a catalogue and databases and search engines and ebooks and whatever on their website too. And you decide kind of what terms you're going to put in. So a search, like one word can change the whole search. So just kind of figure out what's the most important words that you need to find. Keeva, do you use any kind of other things to find articles? Or if anybody has any other suggestions, you can just pop it in the chat.
Usually when I was researching, I would kind of just do a general Google search first, look for like key terms and see how the words come up together, and then go back to the library and put in the key search there. I think each library has a different set of like, search engines that you can use as well. So that would have been the main way I would
And
have
even
done.
Googling it, you
Yeah,
can get like a more kind of easier to understand like art,
yeah,
even if it's a newspaper article or something, to start
yeah,
off with and actually understand what you're looking for, and then
yeah,
kind of dig in deeper to the kind of journal articles. So
exactly.
Google
Yeah.
search is kind of really beneficial, and even books or even your lecture notes are a good place to start to actually get a bit of background behind what you're looking for.
And if you know anyone who's kind of worked in the area that you're doing an assignment on, or a friend who's done a similar assignment, having a chat with your peers and friends, it can be really useful as well to try figure out what it is that you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So this is just another question, guys. So how do you normally complete your research? So I suppose this is kind of asking where you actually finding your research. And I suppose first years mightn't be too sure. You mightn't have a good understanding of any assignments or whatever. But if a few of you can kind of put in where do you normally go to find your research, that would be great. And I suppose it depends on the subject as well and the course you're doing. Um, there's specific search engines for each, I know. So we have a few there. So we have Google Scholar, the library search, Wikipedia citations actually, yeah. So I suppose with Wikipedia it's not really not really recommended to actually
Yeah.
cite Wikipedia, but sometimes the Wikipedia do have good references at the bottom of their articles, and then you can kind of click into them for more detail. Yeah, so that's a good place to start Wikipedia as well.
Yeah.
So yes, we have the library, bibliographies. Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you're reading a paper and you come across like a good research paper within that paper, you can find their references at the end, and you might need to go to that paper and read it. What else do we recommend? A text as well? Yeah, I forgot about that one. So if the lecturer said to read something, that's really good. Have we covered Google as well, and the library A to Z database as well? So that's
Another
great.
good one is to go back to your lecture slides and see how it's mentioned in the slides, and that can kind of help, guide your search as well when you're putting it all into um, the Google Scholar and library A to Z database, things like
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good few there. So I suppose
Yeah.
if you haven't used one, there's some suggestions there to maybe look at for your next assignment and things. It's good to learn from each other, and I suppose just when you're researching, it's really good to kind of organize. I know, um, like don't be reading too many articles on the one day and things like that. Kind of splitting up your research, and having kind of them really organized, because sometimes students can start writing the assignment, and forget where the reference is, and kind of panic because they can't find where the reference is. So just when you're taking notes from a research article or a book or whatever, just make sure that you have them organized and have them kind of, where did this come from and what was the author's name, what journal article did it come from, what page, if it's a book and things, so you can kind of reference back, and you're not about to hand in your assignment and forget that you have this thing to reference and you can't
Yeah.
find it then. So, um, yeah.
The bookmark feature on Google is actually quite handy as well to keep a track if you're quickly finding stuff before you get to take it down and you have to leave, bookmark it and then go back and fill in that information then after, so you'll always have it saved. And maybe like the folders you can create in the bookmark section as well.
Yeah, maybe create a folder for like a maths, I suppose you wouldn't have a maths assignment, but like an English assignment, if you had
Yeah.
one on like poetry, and creating a folder and
Yeah.
bookmarks, and just kind of, putting them in there. And then sometimes people like to do a search first, before they actually start reading. So putting them in the search, and then don't be afraid to delete some of them as well that are not relevant once you start reading. Yeah, so that's another tip. So I suppose tips for organizing your research. So keep your notes focused. So just making sure that you keep going back to your assignment brief, and you're not taking down notes that are not relevant to the question, because sometimes articles and things, they can go off on tangents and that are not relevant. So really kind of using your active reading and using your good note taking, you're writing the information that you need, and that's answering the question. Writing your notes in your own words is good as well. I suppose this will save you time later when you're actually writing your assignment, and like avoiding plagiarism as well. So writing the notes in your own words is good. So sorting your information into categories. So like Keeva said, sorting them into different folders. If you're bookmarking them, if you're taking notes with pen and paper, just making sure that you have your different kind of topics in different places, or different colored titles, or little bookmarks, just so they're organized. Consider how various elements of the topic connect to one another. So this is good kind of for critical kind of reading. So what's related to what, or what's the opposite of what. Establish a detailed plan or outline of an assignment. So this is really good before you start researching as well. So having like a rough assignment plan of what am I going to say in paragraph 1, what topic am I going to look at in paragraph 2, and that can guide your research as well. Develop an argument. So I suppose being really critical when you're looking at research articles. So your critical reading, and you're looking for the pros and cons and what was the limitations and things, and what was actually good about the article too. Use quotations effectively and sparingly. I know in English it might be different. You might be allowed to kind of use a lot of quotes, but I suppose just be sparingly. In other kind of assignments, you don't want to read quote after quote after quote. The lecturer is looking for your own kind of interpretation and your own kind of stance on things. So if you're just kind of putting quotes in everywhere, you're not really kind of developing your argument in any way. Yeah. So if you use a quote, just make sure that you have kind of explained what the quote means, and things like that. And I suppose reference as you go is kind of the last point. Just putting down your references so you don't lose them before you hand in your assignment.
And don't leave the reference until the very last, because that can take a long time and it's not as enjoyable. Whereas if you just do it as you're going, you're getting that job out of the way.
Yeah, so that's for your bibliography, and I suppose we'll be speaking that a bit more in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, I suppose if you have a bibliography or a reference list at the end of your assignment, do that as you go, because that nearly takes a good few hours to kind of get everything in place, and I suppose get into the right format and things. So yeah, that's great. So that's the end of it. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? And Keeva, we also have a feedback form that Keeva will be putting into the chat, and it's just really good for us as well, because I suppose we're learning as we go in these webinars as well. So we kind of want to get your feedback to see how we can improve them. And I suppose we use Mentimeter today, so maybe if you like that or whatever. But if you have any questions about active reading, note taking, or researching, you can just pop it in the chat.
I'm going to stop recording now, so if anyone would be more comfortable to wait until after that, that's no problem. So that is stop recording.